Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm truly delighted you've joined us today because we are about to really pull back the curtain on something fundamental.
Something really core to learning, yeah.
Exactly. We're talking about one of the most crucial, yet I think consistently undervalued pillars of true English mastery.
It's funny how the simple things are often overlooked.
Isn't it just, this isn't about chasing, fleeting trends or some magic formula. It's about drilling down into the profound, the enduring power of repetition.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because repetition, it sounds almost too simple, maybe even a bit boring, if we're honest.
Right. Like school drills or something.
Exactly. But just pause for a moment. Think about how you acquired your very first language, your native tongue.
Okay. Yeah.
You didn't, for instance, sit down with a grammar textbook at age 2.
Yeah.
Right? And consciously memorize verb conjugations or endless vocabulary lists.
Definitely not. I don't think I could even hold a textbook then.
Precisely. Instead, you were just immersed. You were surrounded by this constant symphony of sounds, individual words, entire phrases.
Was hearing it all the time?
All the time. Repeated to you, sometimes totally unconsciously, like background noise, other times deliberately, say, da, say mama, over and over again.
In countless different situations, too.
In countless different contexts, exactly. By your family, caregivers, everyone around you. It was this natural, often completely subconscious immersion.
Like soaking it all in without even trying.
A constant reinforcing stream of sound and meaning. Auditory repetition, contextual repetition. And piece by piece, that meticulous process constructed your entire linguistic world, your understanding, your ability to speak.
And it's that foundational thing, that subconscious building block that you think many English learners might miss.
I think so. Understandably, perhaps. When approaching a new language, we often shift into a more academic mindset. We think study, memorize, test.
Yeah, we treat it differently than how we learned our first language.
And that's where the disconnect can happen. We lose touch with that powerful natural learning mechanism that's actually built into us.
That's such a crucial insight, and it really highlights a common pitfall, doesn't it? Something we observe all the time. Maybe you, listening right now, have even experienced this yourself.
I'm sure many have.
It's that tendency to encounter a new word, maybe a tricky phrase, just once. You might jot it down in a notebook, you look up its meaning, maybe you even say it once or twice.
And you think, okay, got it, locked in.
Exactly. You sort of quietly expect it to magically embed itself permanently in your long-term memory, just ready for instant recall whenever you need it, like perfect recall.
If only it were that easy.
Right. But our brains, incredible as they are, they don't quite operate that way. You blink, maybe a day passes, maybe just an hour, and that word, that phrase, poof.
Vanished. Gone into the ether.
It can simply vanish, floating off into that, vast abyss of forgotten information. Happens to me all the time, even now.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's the natural way of things if we don't fight it.
It's kind of like trying to forge a permanent path through really dense, overgrown forest with just a single walk.
Okay, I like this analogy.
You might disturb a few leaves, right? Maybe leave a faint impression where your foot landed. But realistically...
A day later, the wind blows, maybe it rains.
And it's gone. No one would know you were even there. It certainly won't leave a lasting, discernible trail that you can follow again easily.
That's a perfect picture of learning a word just once. A fleeting impression.
But this deep dive, this is your comprehensive guide. Consider us your trail guides, maybe. We're showing you precisely how to not just walk that path once.
But how to really carve it out.
Exactly. How to carve it deep, making it a clear, well-worn route in your mind, a path you can always navigate with confidence without even thinking too hard about it.
So our objective for this deep dive, our mission, if you will, is crystal clear. We're going to demystify the art and the science of repetition.
We want to show you, step by step, precisely how consistent, intelligently applied repetition, that's the key part, intelligently applied, can permanently imprint new vocabulary into your long-term memory.
Making sure it remains robustly stored, yes,
Yep.
but also readily available. So you can actually use it effortlessly when you need it most, in conversation, in writing, not just recognize it.
And it really extends far beyond just remembering words, doesn't it? Because repetition plays a huge role elsewhere, too.
Absolutely. We're also going to equip you with practical, immediately actionable repetition techniques that are specifically designed to significantly enhance your pronunciation.
Helping you sound not just clearer, which is important, but genuinely more natural, more confident in your spoken English, getting that rhythm and flow right.
That's a big one for many learners, and moreover will confront what's often considered the elephant in the room for many learners, the boredom factor.
Ah, yes. The idea that repetition just equals tedious drills.
Exactly. We need strategies for how to seamlessly integrate effective repetition into your daily practice without it devolving into a tedious, monotonous, or just downright boring chore.
Because let's face it, if it's boring, you're just not going to do it consistently.
Precisely. Fundamentally, learning should be an engaging, stimulating journey, right? Not some monotonous task you actively dread putting on your to-do list.
Absolutely. And finally, to really empower you, we'll arm you with actionable daily exercises. We want to transform this abstract concept of repetition into a tangible, consistent, and ideally genuinely enjoyable habit.
So by the time we conclude this deep dive, our goal is that you will possess the precise knowledge, the nuanced understanding, and crucially, the practical tools required to make English really stick.
Vocabulary, grammar, structures, pronunciation, making it stick firmly in your brain, ensuring lasting retention, and hopefully an undeniable surge in your overall confidence.
This isn't just about a quick fix or temporary improvement. This is about how you systematically build enduring fluency. The real deal.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So let's begin this essential exploration. Let's dive deep. All right, let's unpack this fascinating topic by delving right into the very foundation, the intricate science behind why. Why does repetition act as such a powerful supercharger for learning English, or really for learning anything?
It's a great starting point because we often hear that adage, right? Repetition is the mother of learning, or repetition is key. It gets tossed around casually.
Yeah, everyone says it, but what's actually happening? What's going on inside our incredibly complex brains when we engage in repeated exposure to information?
Well, what's truly captivating here is the brain's inherent, almost instinctive mechanism for prioritizing information. It's constantly bombarded with stimuli.
Sights, sounds, thoughts, everything.
Everything. So it needs a filter. When you encounter a novel piece of information, let's imagine it's a new English word you just heard or read just once.
Like seeing the word ephemeral for the first time?
Perfect example. Seeing ephemeral once. Your brain, quite rationally, tends to treat it as, well, potentially ephemeral itself. Transient. Possibly inconsequential in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, makes sense. It doesn't know if I'll ever need that word again.
Exactly. It might briefly reside in your short-term or working memory. Think of that like a mental scratch pad or your computer's RAM. It's there for immediate use, but it's volatile.
Temporary storage.
It's very temporary.
Yeah.
And without subsequent, sustained reinforcement. Seeing ephemeral again, using it, thinking about it, that information is, more often than not, swiftly discarded.
Like I said, tossed into the recycling bin at the end of the day.
Pretty much. It's like a fleeting note scribbled on a sticky pad that gets crumpled up. The brain needs to make space for new incoming information. Can't hold on to everything it encounters just once.
So it's almost as if our brain possesses this incredibly sophisticated internal algorithm, like a spam filter, but for importance, a highly efficient priority system.
That's a great way to put it, an internal priority system. The more frequently it encounters something, or processes it, or needs to recall it.
The higher up that invisible priority list it ascends.
Exactly right. This consistent frequency, encountering ephemeral multiple times over a few days, perhaps in different contexts, acts as a robust, undeniable signal of importance to your brain.
It's like waving a flag saying, hey, pay attention to this one.
Precisely. It essentially declares, okay, this isn't just fleeting noise, this isn't random data. This must be genuinely crucial for my cognitive functioning, maybe for understanding something important, or for my daily interactions.
Because I keep needing it or keep seeing it.
Yes. And that important tag then triggers a profound and fundamental shift within your neural architecture. It's not just conceptual, it's physical.
Okay, now we're getting into the real mechanics.
The brain actively initiates the process of moving that information, that word ephemeral, from the volatile, easily erased short-term memory into the far more stable, more enduring long-term memory.
Like saving a file to the hard drive instead of just keeping it open in RAM.
Exactly like that. And it does this by literally beginning to construct, strengthen, and optimize the intricate neural pathways associated with that specific piece of information. The connections between your brain cells, your neurons, actually become stronger.
That's the synaptic plasticity we hear about.
That's it. Synaptic plasticity. The connections, the synapses, become more efficient at transmitting the signal for ephemeral, like upgrading the wiring.
Which brings us back to your brilliant forest path analogy. That really helps visualize this microscopic process.
It really does seem to resonate with people. It's such a wonderfully intuitive way to picture what's happening at that neural level.
So paint that picture for us again. Imagine that pristine forest floor.
Untouched, right? No paths, just leaves, maybe some undergrowth. If you were to walk through that forest just once.
Maybe heading towards a particular landmark you saw.
Right. You might leave a remarkably faint impression. A few bent blades of grass, maybe a slightly disturbed patch of leaves where your foot fell, a broken twig.
Barely noticeable.
Realistically, no one else would know you were even there a day later. A bit of wind, maybe some rain, and poof, it's gone.
And that's learning a word like ephemeral just once.
Precisely. It forms a single, fragile, easily disrupted neural connection. Very weak. You might manage to remember it for a few minutes, maybe an hour if you're lucky. But that connection is incredibly susceptible to being overgrown and obscured by the constant influx of new information, new words, new experiences.
Yeah.
Or simply fading into disuse because you never access it again.
Okay, so that's the single walk. Now contrast that.
Now contrast that with walking that exact same path, deliberately seeking out ephemeral again. Maybe you walk it every single day for an entire week, or even more effectively, as we'll discuss later, walking it 5 to 10 times, strategically spaced out over several days.
So not all at once, but repeatedly over time. What happens then?
What becomes evident pretty quickly? You start to see it.
You begin to see a distinct, unmistakable trail forming. The leaves are systematically pushed aside, the undergrowth gets flattened down, maybe even some roots become exposed where you keep stepping.
Exactly. It transforms from a vague impression into an established, easily navigable route. It becomes almost impossible to ignore. Following it starts to feel almost instinctual.
You don't have to search for it anymore, you just know where it is.
Precisely. That well-worn, clearly defined trail in the forest is the perfect analogy for a robust, deeply ingrained neural pathway in your brain for the word ephemeral.
So each repetition is like another footstep on that path.
Every single repetition deepens and reinforces that pathway. It makes the connection physically more resilient, more stable, and significantly more accessible for future use. The signal travels faster, more easily.
So a word that was once just a faint, easily lost whisper in your mind
Transforms into a permanent, readily available fixture. It's primed for instantaneous recall when you need it in conversation or writing.
The contrast couldn't be starker, really. Fleeting memory from a single, isolated exposure.
Versus permanent, deeply embedded retention resulting from strategic, consistent, and repeated exposure. It isn't some kind of magic or mystery.
It's just brain mechanics.
It's grounded in fundamental neuroscience and the brain's incredible capacity for adaptation, for learning, for physically changing itself based on experience. This is also, by the way, how we directly counteract the forgetting curve.
Ebbinghaus. I remember reading about that. The idea that we forget things really quickly if we don't review them.
Hermann Ebbinghaus, a pioneer in memory research back in the 19th century, scientifically demonstrated that our memory retention for new information drops off incredibly sharply over time, exponentially. Actually, if we don't actively try to recall it.
So if you learn ephemeral today, by tomorrow you might only remember, what, half of it? And even less the day after.
Something like that, yes, without review. It varies, but the drop-off is steep. Strategic repetition, especially the kind we're about to discuss, directly targets that curve. It makes you review the information just as the memory starts to fade significantly.
Kind of like giving it a little boost right when it needs it.
Precisely. You're effectively flattening that forgetting curve,
Yeah.
interrupting the decline, and ensuring the information doesn't just fade away, but actually gets stronger, eventually sticking permanently.
And this is where it truly gets captivating, I think. Moving beyond just the what. Yes, repetition strengthens memory to the critical how, because it's emphatically not just any kind of repetition that achieves this profound effect, is it?
Absolutely not. That's a crucial distinction. We are definitely not advocating for mindlessly chanting a word 50 times in a row until you're utterly exhausted and bored stiff.
The brute force method, which I think many people try and then they give up because it's just awful.
It can be incredibly counterproductive.
Yeah.
That kind of rote, forced repetition often leads to mental fatigue, even resentment towards the learning process itself. Your brain just shuts down.
So there's a specific way to do it, a secret sauce, perhaps?
You could call it that. There's a specific kind of repetition, or rather specific strategies for repetition, that profoundly maximize this brain-building process, turning your effort into enduring, accessible memory much more efficiently,
And that brings us perfectly seamlessly to one of the most effective, scientifically validated methods for making vocabulary truly stick.
which is known as spaced repetition.
Right. Spaced repetition. This sounds like the intelligent approach we were hinting at.
Yeah, it really is. This naturally leads us to that crucial question. If repetition is indeed so inherently powerful, how do we harness that power intelligently, efficiently? How do we avoid those pitfalls of just mindless rote memorization?
Exactly. How do we get the benefits without soul-crushing boredom?
That, precisely, is where the elegance and the sheer efficacy of spaced repetition truly shine. It's a game changer for many learners.
So for our listeners, could you really break it down? What exactly is spaced repetition, and what makes it such a remarkably brain-friendly and ultimately effective approach for language acquisition?
Okay, so spaced repetition, at its core, is an incredibly elegant and sophisticated learning technique designed specifically to counteract your brain's natural forgetting curve that we just talked about.
Fighting against that natural tendency to forget things over time.
Exactly. Instead of the common, yet often surprisingly inefficient method of cramming, where you might repeat a new word, let's say ubiquitous, 10 or 20 times within a single 5-minute sitting.
Which feels productive at the time. You feel like you're really drilling it in.
It does, and it might yield very temporary recall, maybe for a test the next day, but that memory fades remarkably quickly afterwards because the pathway wasn't truly solidified.
Right. The forest path is still pretty faint.
Very faint. The core principle of spaced repetition instead is to review that information, the word ubiquitous,
Yeah.
at strategically increasing intervals of time.
Increasing intervals. Okay, explain that.
So you might learn the new word today, then you review it again tomorrow, then maybe in 3 days' time, then perhaps a week later, then maybe 2 weeks, then a month later, and so on. The gaps between reviews get progressively longer.
Huh. That sounds almost counterintuitive at first glance. You're intentionally putting longer breaks between reviews. My immediate gut reaction would be, no, review it more often, hammer it in right away to make sure it sticks.
I know it feels that way, doesn't it? Why would that staggered approach, introducing longer delays, be so much more effective than just concentrated, immediate repetition?
Yeah, what's the logic there?
It's because that staggered recall, those carefully timed, expanding intervals, challenges your brain just the right amount. It hits what memory researchers call the sweet spot of cognitive effort.
The sweet spot. Okay, not too hard, not too easy.
Precisely. Each time you're prompted to remember the word ubiquitous, using a spaced repetition system, it's ideally scheduled to appear just before you're statistically likely to completely forget it.
Okay, so it catches it right on the edge of forgetting.
Exactly. That subtle moment of struggle, that micro effort required to actively retrieve the information from the depths of your memory, that is what truly strengthens the underlying neural connection.
So the effort itself is the key.
The effortful retrieval is the key. Think of it as a perfectly calibrated workout for your memory muscles. If you review the word too soon after learning it, when it's still fresh,
It's too easy, no effort.
exactly, it's too effortless, and your brain doesn't perceive a significant need to strengthen that memory. It's like lifting a tiny 1-pound dumbbell. You're not going to build much muscle doing that repeatedly.
Okay,
Conversely, if you wait too long between reviews and you've completely forgotten the word,
then you're basically starting over, relearning it.
which is inefficient, you're back to making that first faint track in the forest again. Spaced repetition masterfully hits that ideal balance. It ensures the retrieval is challenging but successful.
So it's like telling your brain, hey, I needed this word ubiquitous again, and it took me a little effort to find it, so it must be important.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. This word has just been successfully recalled after a slight but significant effort, which indicates it's crucial. Do not discard it. This method optimizes the effort-to-retention ratio, leading to far more efficient and crucially lasting memorization with less overall review time compared to cramming.
That explanation really clarifies it. It's like you're subtly, scientifically tricking your brain into believing the information is more vital than it might initially appear, just because it keeps successfully reappearing after these perfectly timed, short mental sprints.
Okay.
That makes total sense now.
It leverages the brain's own rules for memory consolidation.
So practically speaking then, how can our listeners genuinely implement this powerful technique? Are there specific tools they should be looking at, or can they effectively do this themselves, maybe low-tech, without needing special apps?
Great question. And the answer is both pathways are incredibly effective. It really depends on your preference and learning style.
Okay, so let's talk tech first. What's out there?
In our modern digital age, technology has made implementing spaced repetition remarkably accessible and frankly very efficient. There are several popular, highly sophisticated apps out there. Maybe you've heard of them like Anki, Quizlet, Memrise, Brainscape. There are quite a few.
I've definitely heard of Anki and Quizlet. Lots of language learners swear by them.
They do, and for good reason. These apps are built entirely around the scientifically proven principle of spaced repetition. They utilize intricate algorithms, complex mathematical formulas, essentially that meticulously track your recall performance for each individual word or flashcard you create.
So it learns how well I know each specific word.
Exactly. Based on whether you tell the app you easily remembered a word, ubiquitous, nailed it. Struggled a bit with it, ubiquitous, yeah, got it eventually. Or completely forgot it, ubiquitous, blank. The app automatically schedules your next review for that specific card.
At the optimal time for my brain and that word.
Precisely. At the scientifically calculated optimal time for maximum long-term retention for you. If you indicate you remembered a word effortlessly, the app will push the next review much further into the future. If you found it challenging, it will resurface much sooner, maybe even the next day.
Wow. It truly is like having a hyper-personalized memory coach living directly in your pocket or on your computer.
It really is. It takes the guesswork out of scheduling reviews, which is fantastic for consistency and efficiency. These apps are powerful tools.
That sounds incredibly convenient, almost a no-brainer if you like using apps. But as you said, not everyone wants to rely on an app. Maybe they prefer a more hands-on, tangible approach, or perhaps they just find screens distracting during study time.
Absolutely valid points. And the good news is you can implement the core principles of spaced repetition with remarkable effectiveness, using nothing more than, say, a simple notebook, a stack of index cards, the classic flashcard system, or even just setting mental reminders or calendar alerts.
The old-school methods still work.
They absolutely do, if you apply the spacing principle consistently. So for those who want to implement this manually without specific software, what would a practical non-app schedule look like? Can you provide a concrete daily blueprint that listeners can follow immediately?
Yeah, let's get really practical. Let's take a word and walk through it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's stick with our example from earlier. Resilience. Really useful word, meaning the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness.
Okay, resilience. Day one, what do I do?
Day one. This is your initial learning phase. You encounter the new word resilience. Maybe you look it up, understand its meaning and pronunciation. Now, the crucial step here isn't just passively writing it down or reading its definition 50 times.
Active engagement.
Active engagement from the get-go.
Yeah.
You need to actively use it in a simple yet meaningful sentence, something that resonates with you personally or connects to something you already understand.
Make it relevant to me.
Yes. For instance, you might say aloud or write down, after facing many challenges in her life, her resilience grew stronger. Or, starting new business requires a lot of resilience. This immediate active application begins the process of building semantic and contextual connections in your brain. You're linking the word to a real-world scenario, not just keeping it as an abstract definition.
Okay, got it. So, create a sentence on day one. What about day two?
Day two, the very next day. Your primary goal is to recall the word resilience without looking it up first. That moment of purposeful retrieval is critical. Try to pull it from memory.
That little bit of struggle we talked about.
Exactly. And then, crucially, use it in a different sentence than the one you created on day one. This forces your brain not just to retrieve the word itself, but to apply it flexibly in a new contextual association. It proves you understand its meaning beyond just that first example.
So maybe something like,
For example, you could formulate a sentence like, the small town showed incredible resilience after the flood, working together to rebuild. Or, developing mental resilience helps people cope better with stress. You're showing you can manipulate the word and fit it into new situations. You're not just repeating a memorized phrase.
okay, different sentence on day two. You mentioned spacing it out, so we skip a couple of days. What happens next?
Yes, now we introduce a slightly bigger gap. Let's jump to day 5. By now, that neural pathway for resilience should certainly be more distinct, a bit more worn, thanks to those first 2 encounters.
The trail is getting clearer.
It is.
Yeah.
So on day 5, You elevate the challenge again. You push yourself to actively attempt to incorporate the word resilience into a natural, spontaneous conversation.
Ooh, okay. Taking it out into the real world, that feels like a bigger leap.
It is, but it's where the magic happens for fluency. This is where theoretical knowledge truly meets real-world application. You need to plan for it slightly. Suggest a specific scenario to yourself for the day. Okay, today, when I talk to my language partner, I will find a way to describe someone using the word resilience.
Or maybe talk about a news story.
Perfect. I'll recount a recent news story about overcoming adversity to a colleague, and I'll make a conscious effort to say, the community demonstrated incredible resilience in the face of that disaster. This deliberate act forces you to retrieve the word under the mild pressure of real-time communication.
Which is totally different from just writing a sentence alone.
Totally different. It's absolutely vital for developing fluency. You're actively building that practical bridge between passively recognizing the word and actively producing it when you need it.
Okay, day 1, learn and use. Day 2, recall and use differently. Day 5, use in conversation. What's the final step in this example schedule?
Let's push it out further. Day 10. This truly sounds like, and is, the ultimate test of both understanding and expressive mastery for that word at this stage.
The boss level for resilience.
Huh, you could call it that. On day 10, you integrate the word into a more complex creative writing exercise. This requires deeper processing. It could be writing a short story, a detailed journal entry about a personal experience, maybe a blog post, or even just crafting a complex descriptive paragraph.
Give me an example sentence for that creative writing stage.
Okay, you might craft something like, the ancient oak tree, battered by countless storms yet still standing tall, was a powerful symbol of nature's enduring resilience against the odds. Or, reflecting personally, looking back, I realized my journey through that difficult period taught me a profound lesson about my own inner resilience.
That definitely demands more thought. You have to really understand the nuances.
Absolutely. This exercise demands a much deeper level of cognitive processing. It compels you to manipulate the word, consider its nuanced connotations, perhaps its synonyms or antonyms, and demonstrate true mastery by using it in an imaginative, grammatically coherent, and stylistically appropriate way within a larger piece of text. The mental gymnastics involved here really solidify the word in your long-term memory.
Wow. That's a very clear, actionable plan. Day 1, day 2, day 5, day 10, learn, use, reuse differently, use in conversation, use in writing.
And you could adapt to specific days, of course. The core principle is the increasing intervals combined with active recall and varied application. Maybe it's day 1, 3, 7, 14. The exact schedule is less critical than the concept of spaced active retrieval.
So the powerful takeaway here is abundantly clear. It's emphatically not about the sheer brute force volume of repetitions crammed into a single sitting. That's just not efficient for long-term memory.
Not at all. Instead, it's about the strategic, intelligent distribution of those repetitions across carefully considered intervals of time.
Consistently combined with active application, actually using the word.
And progressively increasing levels of contextual complexity. Simple sentences, then different sentences, then conversation, then writing.
This multifaceted approach is demonstrably superior, scientifically proven to be better than concentrated, one-time memorization attempts.
Absolutely. You're not just temporarily remembering. You are literally building a stronger, more reliable, and incredibly resilient neural network in your brain dedicated to that language. You're wiring it in.
Okay, that covers vocabulary brilliantly. Now let's pivot our focus. Because knowing the words is only half the battle, right? We need to sound good saying them.
A critical piece of the puzzle indeed.
Let's explore how to perfect your pronunciation through consistent, active repetition. It's one thing, of course, to know a word like resilience and its meaning.
But it's an entirely different level of fluency, isn't it, to articulate that word clearly, naturally, and with the authentic rhythm and music of English.
Exactly, not sounding like you're reading it phonetically from a dictionary, but like you actually speak the language.
You've hit on such a crucial distinction there. Sounding natural in English isn't merely about correctly producing the individual sounds, like the D or the R. That's part of it, of course.
But it's more than that.
It's so much more. It encompasses the entire flow, the melody, what linguists call prosody or intonation contour, the subtle stress patterns within words and sentences, and the inherent rhythm of the language, how words link together smoothly.
That musicality you mentioned earlier.
Yes. And achieving that level of naturalness, that authentic sound, undeniably requires repeated, active, out-loud practice. You can't just think about pronunciation, you have to do it.
Makes sense. You have to train your mouth muscles.
Precisely. And my absolute go-to technique for this, celebrated for its sheer simplicity but also its profound effectiveness, is what we generally term listen and repeat, or often more actively referred to as mimicking or sometimes shadowing.
Okay, listen and repeat, or mimicking. It sounds quite intuitive on the surface, pretty straightforward. But I imagine, like with spaced repetition, there's a highly specific, optimized way to execute it for maximum impact, right? You can't just mumble along vaguely.
Absolutely right. You need to be focused and intentional about it. The foundational first step is absolutely critical. You must find authentic English audio, material delivered by native speakers speaking naturally.
Not those slow, overly careful textbook recordings.
Please steer clear of those if your goal is natural pronunciation. They can be helpful for absolute beginners understanding structure, perhaps, but they don't reflect how people actually talk. Seek out podcasts you genuinely enjoy listening to, like this one, hopefully,
Oh, nice plug.
or YouTube videos on subjects that truly pique your interest. Cooking channels, tech reviews, travel vlogs, whatever you like. Compelling scenes from your favorite TV shows or movies are fantastic sources, too.
Because the actors are delivering lines naturally, usually.
Exactly. Or even short news clips from reputable sources like the BBC or NPR. The key is that the material should be engaging enough to keep you motivated, and it must reflect real-world conversational English.
So you're mimicking natural speech patterns, connected speech, reductions, all of that. Not just isolated, perfectly pronounced words.
Precisely. That's where the gold is for pronunciation.
Okay, so you've successfully identified your authentic source material, maybe a cool YouTube video or a scene from a show. Now, walk us through the actual micro practice loop. How do listeners actually do this listen and repeat thing in a detailed, effective way?
Right. Once you have your audio or video ready, here's the meticulous process. It's simple, but requires focus. First, select a very short sentence or a natural phrase.
How short is short?
Ideally, something between, say, 3 to 7 words. Something that sounds conversational and potentially useful in real life. Don't try to mimic a whole long paragraph at once.
Bite-sized chunks.
Exactly. Now, play that short chunk of audio. Immediately pause the audio or video right after the native speaker utters it. Don't let too much time elapse because your auditory memory fades incredibly quickly.
Got to catch it while it's fresh in your ears.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Then, and this is the paramount step, repeat it out loud, but here's the key. Don't just utter the words passively. Focus with intense concentration on mimicking every single detail you can perceive.
Every detail, like what specifically?
The precise vowel and consonant sounds, did they say can or can? Was the T sharp or soft? The inherent rhythm of the sentence, where were the beats, the stresses? The stress placed on particular words, which words carried the main meaning? And the subtle yet crucial rise and fall of their intonation, did their voice go up at the end or down?
Wow, okay. That's a lot to listen for in a short phrase.
It is. It takes practice to tune your ear. Let's use a concrete example.
Hi.
A quintessential, incredibly common phrase you'll encounter daily in spoken American English. I'm going to go to the store.
Okay, I'm going to go to the store. Pretty simple.
Seems simple. But a learner might initially try to articulate this very carefully as, I am going to go to the store. Meticulously pronouncing each word distinctly, maybe stressing every word equally.
Right. Very clear, but not how people actually talk.
Not usually, no. A native speaker will almost invariably contract going to into the relaxed form, gonna, that's reduction. And they'll naturally link words together, so go to the often blends into one smooth sound, almost like good at the...
Good at the store. Yeah, I hear that. That's connected speech.
Exactly. Those linking sounds and reductions are huge hurdles that frequently trip up even advanced learners. That seamless transition of I'm going to go to the store as almost a single breath group rather than 5 distinct separate words or syllables.
Okay, so how do I practice that tiny phrase using the micro loop?
Right. So you hear the native speaker say, I'm going to go to the store. Imitates natural, fast pace. You immediately pause, then you repeat it out loud. I'm going to go to the store.
Okay, I said it. Now what?
Now, critically, don't just do it once or casually twice while checking your phone. Genuinely repeat that specific phrase 5, maybe even 10 times in a row. Right then and there.
10 times. The exact same short sentence. Won't that feel repetitive?
It is repetitive. That's the whole point. But each repetition is not simply mindless babbling or rote sound memorization. Each time you repeat it, you are actively fine-tuning. You're actively listening to yourself and comparing.
Comparing my version to the original native speaker version I just heard.
Precisely. You're asking yourself critical questions. Did my mouth position accurately reflect theirs? Was my gonna sufficiently relaxed and natural, or did I overpronounce it? Did I effectively link go to the smoothly, without an awkward break? Was my overall intonation pattern similar, maybe slightly falling at the end for a statement?
So it's analytical repetition, conscious practice.
Very conscious practice. You are actively engaging your articulatory muscles, training your tongue, your lips, your jaw to make these new, perhaps unfamiliar English sounds and movements. You're working on your breath control, and you're using your critical auditory feedback loop, listening to yourself to spot the differences.
It's like building muscle memory, but for your mouth and tongue.
That is exactly what it is. You're gradually, iteratively closing the acoustic gap between your current pronunciation and the target pronunciation of the native speaker. It's a precise, focused process of refinement through repetition.
And you strongly emphasized earlier repeating full sentences or phrases rather than just drilling isolated words like gonna or store. Why is that distinction so profoundly important for mastering pronunciation and overall fluency?
Because English, like pretty much all languages, isn't just a collection of isolated words strung together like beads on a string. That's not how it works.
Right, words change sound depending on what's around them.
They do. And beyond that, the language possesses a distinct characteristic rhythm, a certain beat or stress pattern. It has a unique musicality or prosody, and highly specific stress patterns within sentences that convey meaning.
Like, stressing different words changes the emphasis completely. I'm going to go to the store versus I'm going to go to the store tomorrow.
Exactly. When you consistently repeat full sentences or natural phrases, you begin to internalize these crucial suprasegmental elements, the things beyond just the individual vowel and consonant sounds.
The rhythm, the stress, the melody.
You instinctively learn which words in a sentence are typically stressed for emphasis, usually content words like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and which are unstressed and often reduced, like function words a, that, to, is. You learn where the natural pauses and breath breaks typically occur in longer sentences. And you start to feel how subtle shifts in intonation that rise or fall in pitch can convey different meanings, like a question versus a statement, different emotions, or even grammatical structures.
So practicing sentences teaches you the music of English, not just the notes.
Perfectly put. Mastering these holistic elements of sentence-level pronunciation is absolutely vital for achieving fluent, genuinely understandable speech that sounds natural to native ears. It goes far beyond just articulating individual words correctly, even if perfectly.
It's the critical difference, maybe, between merely speaking English words and truly speaking English as a coherent, expressive, flowing whole.
That's the goal. It also helps immensely with a related technique called shadowing. Have you heard of that?
Shadowing, yeah, where you try to talk along with the speaker, right? Like a shadow.
Exactly. It's like simultaneous repetition. You play the audio and try to speak at the exact same time as the native speaker, trying to match their pace, their rhythm, their intonation, their pauses, everything in real time.
That sounds really challenging.
It is. It's definitely more advanced than simple listen and repeat. But it forces you to not just listen passively, but to actively produce the language while simultaneously processing it, mimicking the entire melody of language as it happens. It's incredibly powerful for improving fluency and natural rhythm once you get the hang of it.
So listen and repeat builds the foundation. Shadowing takes it to the next level for flow.
A good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Both rely heavily on repetition.
It truly reminds me again of learning to play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
You dedicate time, maybe hours, to mastering individual notes, making sure each one is clear and accurate. Maybe you practice a few tricky chords over and over. And those are undeniably important foundational elements. You need them.
You absolutely do.
But genuine mastery, becoming a real musician, isn't just about hitting the right notes one by one in isolation. It's about effortlessly playing entire scales, understanding the intricate melody, the underlying harmony, the phrasing, the dynamics, and the fluid flow of a complete musical piece.
That's where the true artistry lies.
The genuine fluidity, the captivating expression it comes from integrating all those notes into a meaningful whole. Your brain, your fingers, they need to learn the entire symphony or the melody of English, not just the individual notes in isolation.
That's a remarkably precise and apt analogy. I love it. You would never realistically expect to perform a complex symphony beautifully by exclusively practicing individual notes in isolation, would you? It wouldn't work.
No way. It would sound disjointed and robotic.
The same fundamental principle applies directly to spoken English. The sentence, or the natural phrase, with its unique rhythm, stress, and intonation, is your symphony. You need to practice the whole piece.
Okay, so we've firmly established, I think, that repetition is utterly vital, crucial for both robust vocabulary acquisition using spaced repetition and for achieving authentic pronunciation through mimicking and shadowing.
Absolute critical on both fronts.
But let's be entirely honest with ourselves and with our listeners. The very word repetition can immediately conjure these daunting images, right?
Mm.
Of tedious, mind-numbing drills, monotonous exercises you just have to force yourself through.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly scream fun, does it?
Not usually. If approached incorrectly or unimaginatively, it can indeed feel incredibly monotonous, soul-crushingly boring, and deeply demoralizing. So the million-dollar question is, how do we make repetition enjoyable? How do we make it engaging, maybe even creatively stimulating?
How do we avoid the drudgery?
Exactly. How do we ensure it never becomes that dreaded chore on your list that you consistently put off until tomorrow, which never comes?
That is, without a doubt, a crucial inflection point in any learning journey. Because if the process feels like arduous forced labor, your motivation will inevitably plummet. It just will. And you simply won't stick with it consistently enough to see the real benefits.
Consistency is everything with repetition.
It really is. But the wonderfully encouraging news, the really good news, is that there are myriad fun, dynamic, and surprisingly effortless ways to seamlessly integrate effective repetition into your daily life without it feeling like work at all.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give us the secrets.
The core philosophy here is really about shifting your mindset. Embrace creativity. Inject an element of playfulness into it. Make it an extension of your natural curiosity and your existing interests.
Learning through play, essentially.
Pretty much. Let's kick things off with one of my absolute favorite methods, one that literally transforms mundane practice into, potentially, a genuine delight. Using acting techniques.
Acting! Okay, tell me more. How can we leverage the immersive world of movies and TV shows to become our very own personal English acting coaches?
This is an absolutely brilliant and highly effective method because it taps into things we already enjoy. It's inherently immersive, it's incredibly entertaining for most people, and it's deeply engaging on multiple levels.
So step one, pick a show or movie I like.
Exactly. Choose a movie or a TV show that you genuinely love or are really interested in watching, something you'd watch for pleasure anyway. Critically, watch it with English subtitles on.
English subtitles, not my native language.
Definitely avoid your native language subtitles if you can manage. They become a crutch, and you end up reading more than listening. English subtitles help you connect the sound to the spelling, but your primary focus should be listening.
Okay, English subtitles on, movie playing, now what?
Now, here's the truly fun, transformative part. When a character delivers an interesting line, maybe an impactful phrase, a particularly useful sentence, a common conversational expression you want to learn, maybe a witty comeback, a dramatic declaration, or even a nuanced idiom that catches your ear.
Something I think, ooh, I want to be able to say that.
Exactly. Hit that pause button immediately, right after they say it. Now, don't just passively repeat the words back in your normal voice. Encourage yourself, really push yourself, to fully become the actor.
Become the actor, what does that mean?
It means repeat the line out loud, but try to do it with the character's precise intonation. Mirror their emotion, where they're angry, sad, excited, sarcastic. Trying to capture that feeling in your voice. And even if you're feeling adventurous, attempt to mimic their body language or their facial expressions as they said the line.
Whoa, okay, so if a character is like slamming their fist on the table and shouting, I will not stand for this with an angry face.
You do it too. Maybe don't slam your actual fist too hard, but get the angry tone, get the emphasis, maybe make an angry face in the mirror. If a character whispers a secret, can you keep this between us? Lean in and whisper it with that same conspiratorial tone.
Oh, I absolutely love that. So if a character is exclaiming, maybe, I can't believe you did that, with wide, shocked eyes and a gasp.
You're not just articulating the words, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
You're actively trying to feel that genuine shock. Embody it and infuse your voice, your posture, maybe even your gasp with it.
That sounds incredibly effective for internalizing the natural delivery, the emotion behind the words.
Exactly. This active, embodied approach adds an incredibly playful, immersive, and multi-sensory dimension to your pronunciation of fluency practice. You're not just engaging your auditory memory and your mouth muscles.
You're using your whole body, your emotions.
You're recruiting more parts of your brain, your emotional centers, your motor skills network, your mirror neurons perhaps, your empathetic responses, all simultaneously working together. This builds stronger, richer, and far more memorable connections for that phrase.
Because you didn't just hear it, you experienced it.
Precisely. And my advice is to focus your efforts here on common dialogue or expressions. Things that would genuinely be useful and applicable in real-life scenarios. Greetings, common questions, ways to agree or disagree politely, expressing opinions, making requests. Don't just focus on obscure lines or overly dramatic monologues unless you're actually an actor.
Focus on the practical stuff I can actually use.
Yes. You'll soon discover that you're not only improving your accent and articulation for those specific lines, but you're also deeply internalizing the natural delivery, the cadence, the rhythm, the intonation patterns of conversational English, which is so profoundly crucial for sounding authentic and confident. Plus, it's just fun.
It really does sound like fun. Okay, acting is one great way. What about those of us who maybe have more of a musical inclination? Can we creatively harness music, transform new words or tricky phrases into a catchy tune or even a simple rap?
Absolutely. Music is an incredibly potent mnemonic device. It's a scientifically proven, powerful tool for memory enhancement. Our brains seem uniquely wired to remember melodies and rhythms.
Yeah, I can remember song lyrics from decades ago that I haven't heard in years.
Exactly. We all can. You can ingeniously tap into that power.
Yeah.
Transform new vocabulary words you're struggling with, particularly tricky phrases, confusing prepositions, or even complex grammatical structures like irregular verbs, into simple repetitive songs or rhythmic raps.
Do I need to be like a musical genius?
Absolutely not. You certainly don't need to aspire to be a Grammy-winning artist yourself. Honestly, even a very simple, slightly silly, repetitive melody like something you'd make up for a child or a basic catchy beat will yield remarkable results. Think nursery rhymes. Simple, memorable, repetitive.
Okay, so if I'm grappling with, say, those notoriously irregular past tense verbs go went, gone, eat, ate, eaten, see, saw, seen, how could I make that musical?
You could compose a short, simple, maybe slightly silly jingle. Something like, sing-song voice. Today I go, yesterday I went. Gone is the past. Time well spent. Today I eat, yesterday I ate, eaten it all. Cleaned my plate.
Huh. That's surprisingly catchy and kind of embeds the pattern.
Precisely. The inherent rhythm, the rhyme, and the melody in music significantly amplify memorability. They create a powerful auditory hook that dramatically enhances your brain's ability to encode and, more importantly, retrieve that information more easily and quickly later on.
It just sticks in your head differently than a list.
It really does. It inherently transforms the learning process into something much more engaging, much more playful, and far less like a dry academic study session staring at a chart. Consider how effortlessly you recall advertising jingles, even ones you find annoying.
Oh, yeah, they get stuck in there.
You are quite literally harnessing that same innate power of musical memory for your English language acquisition. For instance, if you're trying to commit a set of challenging prepositions of place to memory, like in, on, under, behind, in front of, next to.
Those can be tricky, especially with abstract concepts.
They can. You could choreograph a simple chant or a playful rap that vividly describes objects in your room using those very prepositions. Like, the cat is on the mat, the book is in my hand, the shoes are under the bed, you understand. The chair is next to the table, the lamp is behind the sofa. Learning prepositions, isn't it super?
Okay, maybe workshopping the lyrics a bit, but I get the idea.
Yes, poetic license encouraged. The point is, this playful engagement bypasses the typical study mindset. It feels creative, not like a chore.
I genuinely love that approach. It effectively turns learning into a kind of personal performance, something enjoyable in itself, rather than just a demanding task to tick off. Okay, so acting, music. What about just, normal life, naturally integrating new words into our everyday routines, perhaps even without dedicating specific study time?
This, perhaps, is the most profound and ultimately the most sustainable strategy for long-term retention and true fluency, because it integrates learning into the fabric of your life. The goal is to actively challenge yourself to deliberately use your new words and phrases in a wide variety of diverse real-world scenarios throughout your day.
So not just waiting for the perfect moment to use resilience in conversation.
Exactly. Don't passively wait for the perfect opportunity to magically present itself, because it might not come for weeks. Instead, proactively create those opportunities yourself, even if they feel a little artificial at first.
Okay, could you expand on that? We used the classic ordering coffee example earlier, saying, I'd like a robust dark roast instead of just a coffee. Or asking, can I customize my order? Using a new verb. That's great. But give us more tangible scenarios. How else can we create these opportunities?
Of course. We can take this concept much, much further, weaving it into the simple moments of your daily life. Let's say you're just at home, maybe doing household chores like tidying up. Pick up an object. Describe it to yourself out loud using a new adjective you've recently learned.
Like if I learn the word intricate.
Perfect. You pick up, say, a decorative vase, or look closely at a pattern on a rug or a piece of jewelry. Verbalize aloud, wow, this pattern is incredibly intricate. Or look at the intricate details on this carving. You're activating the word in a relevant context, linking it to a visual.
Okay, talking to myself about objects. What else?
Maybe you're making a grocery list. Don't just write apples. Challenge yourself to use new verbs or adjectives related to food or shopping that you've learned. I need to procure some fresh, leafy vegetables, using a more formal verb. Or, I'm searching for some succulent, ripe strawberries, using descriptive adjectives.
So even mundane tasks like making a list become practice.
Yes. Or you're cooking dinner. Narrate the process to yourself using new verbs related to cooking. First, I need to saute the onions until they are translucent. Now, I will gently fold the egg whites into the batter.
So even if you're completely by yourself, living alone, you can still consistently practice, still actively engage with the language out loud.
Precisely. You don't always need a conversation partner. If a human isn't immediately available, genuinely talk to your pets. Describe your day to your dog using new vocabulary. Or narrate your actions to your houseplants.
Okay, talking to my plants might feel a bit weird, but I see the point.
It might feel weird at first, but seriously, the aim is to proactively create these artificial, low-pressure opportunities to actively activate that newly acquired language, consciously moving it from passive recognition floating around in your mind to confident, active production coming out of your mouth.
Narrate your day.
Narrate your day aloud to yourself, even parts of it. Describe your actions as you wash the dishes. I am meticulously scrubbing this stubborn stain. Comment on a news item you just read, using a new political or economic term. The government's new austerity measures are controversial. Even articulate your deeper thoughts and reflections using your newly acquired vocabulary in a journal or just speaking your thoughts aloud.
So every single time you consciously retrieve that word or phrase from your memory and successfully use it in any context, even talking to yourself.
You are meticulously strengthening and reinforcing its neural pathway in your brain. You're making that forest path wider, clearer, more permanent. This constant, varied, and active application is what truly transforms theoretical knowledge into practical, usable fluency.
The overarching principle here seems truly undeniable then. Embracing variety, different methods, different contexts, infusing playfulness, acting, singing, making it fun, and discovering creative applications in everyday life.
These are absolutely pivotal. They're key to ensuring consistent, enjoyable, and ultimately effective repetition. It fundamentally reframes the act of language learning
Taking it from a strict, often demanding regimen.
into an ongoing, dynamic, and genuinely creative exploration. A part of your life, not separate from it.
Okay, this is all fantastic for us as learners applying repetition to English. But let's shift our perspective now. Let's move beyond just the immediate application for individual words and phrases and explore how repetition functions as an intrinsically powerful tool within English-speaking cultures themselves.
Looking at it from the other side, how native speakers use it.
Exactly, because we see its pervasive influence everywhere, don't we? From, formal academic lectures to highly persuasive political speeches, and even subtly embedded in stand-up comedy routines or advertising jingles.
Absolutely. It's not simply a learner's tool. It is a fundamental, deeply ingrained rhetorical device. And it's also a key characteristic of authentic, natural English discourse in everyday life.
So understanding this can help us both recognize it and maybe even use it more effectively ourselves.
Definitely. It underscores that repetition isn't exclusively for language learners trying to memorize things. It's profoundly embedded in how native English speakers communicate effectively, how they persuade, how they emphasize, and even how they entertain.
Let's start with the more formal side. Public speakers, politicians, leaders, they seem to use repetition deliberately, right?
Oh, absolutely. They are often consummate masters of strategic repetition. They deliberately, carefully reiterate key ideas, impactful phrases, powerful metaphors, or strong emotional appeals.
Why do they do that? What's the goal?
Multiple goals, really. It's about emphasis driving a point home. It's about rhythm making the speech more engaging and memorable. And crucially, it's about ensuring their central message resonates deeply with their audience and remains indelibly etched in the collective memory long after the speech is over.
And the most iconic, maybe the most powerful example that universally comes to mind when you talk about repetition in speeches, of course, is...
Has to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s seminal I Have a Dream speech.
Yeah. That piece of oratory just stands as an absolute masterclass in the artful, impactful deployment of repetition.
It undeniably does. The profound and enduring impact of his "I have a dream" refrain within that famous speech is simply immeasurable. And it wasn't accidental.
No, you can tell it was crafted.
It was absolutely deliberate, a strategic and profoundly purposeful use of a specific rhetorical device known as anaphora.
Anaphora, what's that exactly?
Anaphora is when you repeat a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or sentences. Think about how he structured it. I have a dream that one day. And then later again, I have a dream that my 4 little children, and again, I have a dream today.
Right, he keeps coming back to it, starting sections with that same phrase.
Exactly. By repeating that potent phrase, I have a dream, at the inception of these successive paragraphs or major points, he skillfully built this incredible escalating momentum throughout the speech.
It gathers force as it goes on.
It really does. Each repetition didn't just restate the dream, it amplified it. It allowed him to accumulate more depth, provide richer, more specific examples of that dream, and generate greater emotional resonance with every single iteration.
It created an almost mesmerizing effect, didn't it? Like a chant or a powerful rhythm drawing the listener progressively deeper into the profound message and that shared vision he was painting.
Precisely. It becomes hypnotic in a way. This consistent return to that core dream didn't just emphasize the central message, drilling it deeply into the collective consciousness of his listeners and viewers. It also fostered a powerful, empathetic, emotional connection.
Making people feel it, not just hear it.
Yes, the relentless yet incredibly artful repetition built a shared aspirational vision. It made the core idea not only unforgettable at the time, but embedded it irrevocably into the historical and cultural memory of a nation, and indeed the world.
So it wasn't just repetition for the sake of memory, like remembering a shopping list.
Not at all. It was repetition with profound purpose, meticulously employed to build conviction, to evoke deep emotion, to create unity, and to drive home an undeniable universal truth about justice and equality. It stands as a perfect, timeless example of how repetition, when wielded with mastery and genuine intention, can be profoundly persuasive, emotionally resonant, and enduringly memorable.
Wow. Okay, so that's a very high-level, incredibly intentional form of rhetoric used in major speeches. But how does this principle of repetition play out in just everyday casual conversation? Do native English speakers unconsciously employ repetition in their daily interactions as well, or is it just something politicians do?
Oh, absolutely they do. All the time. Probably far more often than most people realize, and usually completely unconsciously.
Really? How so?
Native speakers instinctively and unconsciously employ repetition through the use of extremely common conversational phrases. These phrases act like, well, like conversational glue or signposts.
What kind of functions do they serve?
A whole myriad of functions. They can act as verbal fillers while someone is thinking. They can be used as acknowledgments to show you're listening. They act as conversational signposts to structure the conversation, or even as subtle tools for building rapport and connection.
And these phrases get used so often they just become automatic.
Pretty much. They are utilized with such incredible frequency that they become almost automatic, like linguistic reflexes. They form an integral part of the natural rhythm and flow of everyday spoken English. You almost don't notice them after a while, but they are definitely there.
Okay, intriguing. Could you give us some of those really common examples? What are some specific phrases our listeners should be attuned to, listen out for, and perhaps even try to integrate into their own speech to sound more natural?
Definitely. One you'll hear constantly, especially in American and British English, is, or you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, all the time, sometimes at the end of every sentence.
Yes, it can be overused.
Yeah.
But this particular phrase is used with incredible frequency across various contexts. And importantly, it's not always or even often a genuine question asking if you literally understand the words being spoken.
Right, it serves another function.
More frequently, it's employed as a softer way to check for general understanding or agreement, or to subtly seek confirmation that the listener is following along or shares a similar feeling. It can also be used to soften a statement, making it sound less confrontational or assertive.
Can you give an example of that softening?
Sure. Some might say, I just think maybe we should reconsider that decision, Adding the no makes it sound less like a direct challenge and more like a suggestion open for discussion. Or after a event, it was a really long day at work, just one thing after another, you know what I mean? I'm just totally exhausted. It invites empathy.
So the consistent, often subtle repetition of this phrase in conversations helps generate a sense of connection, shared understanding, conversational ease.
Exactly. It's almost like a verbal nod of the head, as you said earlier, a way to keep the conversational gears smoothly turning and maintain engagement. It's a pragmatic conversational lubricant.
Okay, you know what I mean. What's another one?
Another incredibly common one you'll encounter, used frequently to structure longer turns or summarize, is at the end of the day.
Ah, yes. Heard that one a lot too. What's its job?
This phrase is invariably used to signal a summary, to conclude a point, or perhaps to state what the speaker feels is the ultimate overarching truth or the most important factor after a lengthy discussion or a complex explanation involving multiple points.
So it's like saying, okay, after considering everything, here's the bottom line.
Precisely. If, for instance, a team has been debating various pros and cons of a project, someone might finally interject with, "Look, we've meticulously looked at all the viable options, we've considered every angle, argued back and forth, but at the end of the day, we simply need to choose the most cost-effective and sustainable solution. That's what matters most."
It functions as a clear verbal signpost then, signaling to the listener, pay attention, I'm about to deliver my final, most crucial or decisive point.
Exactly. It structures the conversation, marking a shift towards conclusion or core message. Very useful.
And then maybe something simpler, just for pure, unadulterated emotion and reaction.
For sure. Think about common expressions of enthusiasm or agreement like, "That's so cool," or "That's awesome," or "No way."
Yeah, that's so cool. It seems almost universal among younger speakers and even older ones now.
It's wonderfully versatile, isn't it? And
Yeah.
frequently repeated. It's a genuine expression of enthusiasm, strong agreement, or just positive acknowledgement. It can be used as a positive reaction to almost anything. Someone shares a novel idea, tells a compelling story, announces exciting news, shows you a new gadget, describes a personal achievement, or even comments on a nice sunset.
So I just learned how to juggle 3 oranges simultaneously.
Oh, that's so cool. You've really got the hang of that. Its simplicity, its broad applicability, and its inherently positive connotation ensure it's repeated countless times in daily interactions, reinforcing social bonds.
Are there others? Maybe things like or sort of?
Absolutely. Phrases like sort of, kind of, and the infamous like often function as hedges or fillers. They can soften statements, express uncertainty, or simply give the speaker a moment to think, similar to, but perhaps more integrated into the sentence flow. For example, it was like really surprising, or I'm kind of tired today. While overuse can be distracting, a certain amount is very natural in informal speech.
And maybe things like basically or honestly.
Yes, basically is often used to signal a summary or simplification like basically we need more time. Honestly, or to be honest, are used to signal candor or perhaps introduce a slightly difficult truth like honestly I wasn't a big fan of the movie.
These are repeated frequently to frame remarks.
So the key insight here for our listeners is that when you're attentively listening to native speakers in movies, podcasts, real life, or actively interacting with them, you'll inevitably hear these specific phrases, and many others like them, repeated over and over and over again.
Often without any conscious thought from the speaker, they are just part of the fabric of fluency. And the profound beauty of this for you as a language learner is that when you begin to consciously notice these patterns, and then judiciously, appropriately, incorporate these very common, naturally repeated expressions into your own spoken English.
You will likely notice an immediate and significant enhancement in how natural and fluent your speech sounds to others.
You won't just be speaking grammatically correct English sentences strung together. You'll be speaking English that flows more naturally, that has the authentic rhythm and the spontaneity of a native speaker.
It makes your English sound more authentic, more integrated into the cultural and social fabric of the language itself. It's about speaking with the pulse of everyday conversation, not just reciting lines. It signals belonging.
All right, this has been an incredibly insightful and I hope deeply practical deep dive into the truly transformative power of repetition in English acquisition. We've covered the science, the vocabulary techniques, pronunciation, making it fun, and even its cultural role.
A lot of ground covered.
Definitely. But as we always say here at the end of our deep dives, knowledge, however profound or interesting it might be, is only truly powerful if it's consistently and immediately applied. Knowing isn't enough. You have to do.
Action is where the learning solidifies.
So for you, our dedicated listener, here is your concrete, actionable challenge task for today, or maybe for this week. We've distilled everything we've discussed into a clear three-step plan for you to immediately implement these insights and begin forging or strengthening those robust neural pathways we talked about.
This challenge is meticulously designed to get you practicing right away, to move you from just passive understanding,
No.
that makes sense, to active application. Okay, I'm actually doing this. It's about initiating that crucial process of building and reinforcing those vital neural connections in your brain for the words you choose.
Okay, ready. Here it is. Step 1. Immediately after this deep dive concludes, or maybe later today when you have a moment, choose 3. Just 3 new English words that you've either learned recently, perhaps even from our discussion today, like resilience, ephemeral, ubiquitous, intricate, or 3 words that you plan to actively learn from future sources, maybe from your reading or listening tomorrow.
Just 3 to start. Keep it manageable.
Exactly. And here's the absolutely crucial part of step 1. Say each of those 3 chosen words out loud, clearly and with intention, a minimum of 5 times each, sometime today. Don't just mentally review them in your head. Articulate them fully. Let the sounds resonate. Feel your mouth making the shapes.
Get that muscle memory starting. Okay, step 2.
Then, for step 2, tomorrow, take those exact same 3 words from step 1. The objective for tomorrow is to actively use each of them in a unique, distinctly different sentence from any examples you used today or any examples you've simply heard or read.
Don't just copy the sentences we used.
No. Really push yourself to create new contexts, new connections, new scenarios that are meaningful to you. This step isn't about rote memorization of sample sentences. It's about active, creative recall and demonstrating flexible application. It shows you truly understand how the word works.
Proving understanding, not just recall.
Got it.
And the final step.
And finally, for step 3. Sometime within the coming week, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 3 days, maybe next weekend, make a conscious, deliberate, and proactive effort to use at least one of these 3 words, ideally all 3 if possible, in a real, live conversation with someone.
Taking it public.
Taking it public. This could be with a supportive friend who knows you're learning. It could be with a dedicated language exchange partner online or in person, maybe a trusted colleague at work, or even in a common everyday scenario like ordering at a restaurant, could I have the robust coffee, asking for directions, or maybe even conversing briefly with a customer service representative online or on the phone.
The overarching goal here is to activate that vocabulary under the mild yet essential pressure of real-time communication in a natural communicative setting.
Because that's where fluency truly blossoms. When you can retrieve and use the word spontaneously when needed, that's the ultimate test.
That's a great 3-step challenge, very actionable. And as you embark on this challenge, or even just reflect on your past learning, we'd absolutely love to hear from you.
Yes, please share.
After you've had a chance to reflect on your own language learning journey, please share with us maybe in the comments section below this deep dive or on our social media, wherever you engage with our content. What's a specific word or phrase that you personally had to repeat many, many times? Maybe using different methods, maybe over a long period, before it finally just clicked, before it stuck firmly, irrevocably in your long-term memory.
Everyone has one, right? That word that just refused to stick for ages.
I'm confident everyone listening has at least one such linguistic, stubborn mule in their past. Sharing your experiences, what the word was, maybe what technique finally worked for you, not only enriches our collective understanding and gives others ideas,
But it also fosters a vibrant community, doesn't it? It reminds us we're all on this shared, sometimes challenging, yet incredibly rewarding journey of language learning together. That's a truly fantastic question, and I'm genuinely eager to read the responses and see which words gave people trouble. And speaking of journeys, our next deep dive is going to be incredibly practical, universally applicable, and dare I say, quite delicious.
Oh, what's on the menu?
We'll be navigating the sometimes confusing, often exciting culinary landscape. We're talking all about how to confidently order food and seamlessly eat out in English.
A vital skill for travelers and locals alike.
Absolutely. We'll cover everything from making reservations and deciphering potentially nuanced menu items, what exactly is pan-seared with a balsamic reduction, to engaging in a natural, polite conversation with your server, handling special requests, and understanding billing customs. You certainly won't want to miss that flavorful exploration.
Sounds very useful indeed. And as you, our listeners, enthusiastically embark on applying the profound power of intelligent repetition from today's discussion, I'd like to leave you with one final, maybe slightly provocative thought. Something to mull over that extends beyond the immediate tips.
Okay, give us something to chew on.
Consider this. Repetition isn't solely about simple memorization, like cramming a phone number just long enough to dial it, for purely temporary recall. At its deepest level, effective repetition is actually about constructing intuition.
Building intuition, how so?
When you repeat something correctly, meaningfully, and consistently enough, be it pronouncing a word, using a grammatical structure, playing a musical scale, or even performing a complex physical movement in sports, it gradually ceases to be a conscious, effortful retrieval process from your declarative memory. You stop thinking about the rule or the definition each time.
It becomes automatic.
Exactly. It begins to transform into an instinct, an automatic response mediated by different parts of your brain, much like the effortless act of walking or riding a bicycle once you've learned, or playing a complex musical piece without consciously thinking about each individual finger movement. It becomes proceduralized, second nature.
So the repetition builds the pathway so strong that it becomes an unconscious habit or skill.
Precisely. So the question to ponder is, how then can you strategically apply this powerful principle of building intuition through instinctive repetition to other diverse areas of your life and learning far beyond just language?
Like what kind of areas?
Think about building consistent positive habits, like exercising or meditating. Think about mastering complex new technical skills required for your profession, or even about developing entirely new, more effective ways of thinking, like practicing critical analysis or creative problem-solving techniques until they become your default approach. How can you use structured repetition to make the desirable response instinctive?
Wow. That's a powerful and expansive thought to leave us with. Applying the principle of building intuition through repetition across life. Fantastic.
Food for thought.
Definitely. Well, until our next deep dive on ordering food, keep talking, keep listening, keep practicing, and above all, genuinely try to enjoy the incredible transformative journey of mastering English through the elegant and enduring power of smart, engaging repetition. Thanks for joining us.